Oakley dokley. So, last time I built a torch, or a flashlight, whatever you choose to call it. I think I have a problem now because I'm building a second one and it probably won't be the last. Now, that last one I built was very powerful, and my plan for this one is to make it more powerful. Well, not the one I have, build a new torch to make it, well, that is more powerful. There, I got it. So, yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so this new torch, I have some design constraints that I want to adhere to, or criteria that I want to adhere to. I don't normally do this, but since I'm building a second version of something I already built, I want it to be better. So I'll put the things up here somewhere. Anyway, so the first thing that I want to sort out is the battery problem, because it's not a problem, it's more of just a mild inconvenience. So what I want is this torch to have its own batteries, which isn't hard. I just have to buy my own batteries, or separate batteries for it. So, number one, batteries, I want them to be self-contained, or I want the torch to have its own dedicated batteries. Number two, I want to make it more compact and more clean than the last torch. And what I mean by that is I've got resistors, wires, fans, lights, switches, not lights, anyway, it doesn't matter, everything just hanging around and hanging out. I don't want that with this one. And by compact, I also mean everything contained within the torch, all the wiring, all the electronics, everything. And I also want it to be like handheld, like a normal sort of torch, I guess. Number three is I want it to be a lot stronger than the previous one, because while it was a little flimsy, it wasn't too bad, but I mean, I want it to be better. I want it to be strong and properly done and everything like that. And I'm up to number four? I think I'm up to number four. Number four, well, I want it to be brighter, and I know that sounds probably stupid because the last one was very bright. I do want it to be brighter and more powerful. And the problem with that though is the fact that it's going to have less usage time between charges. That's not too much of an issue, that's not my biggest concern, but that's just a consequence, I guess, with coming with a brighter torch. So, with all that in mind, let's get going. Okay, so I've ordered all the components that I need to build it. I'm still waiting on a shipment of the resistors, but what I've got is, number one, an old heatsink off a PC. It still works, it's pretty quiet, it fits with the size that I want roughly. Probably a little overkill, but that doesn't really matter. So that just keeps the LEDs cool. Second one is a switch. By the way, this heatsink and this switch I already had laying around, so I didn't buy them new. This switch is just a simple, like, button switch. Is it focus wacky? There we go. Okay, just a simple switch, and that's going to be the main on and off. It's probably, I mean, most of the things I use are probably overkill, but this is the only switch I could find that can handle the 20 amps of current that these LEDs are drawing, and it feels nice, so I got them. Third thing, and probably one of the, well, actually everything's important, but batteries. Now, these particular batteries are, these are 18650 lithium ion batteries, and with any batteries, especially lithium ion, they need to be protected with these. These are the battery management system. Basically a fancy way of saying thing that stops battery going boom. And I need these to stop it from being drained too low, the batteries being drained too low, so they don't get damaged or blow up or whatever. I've got 4 of them. And the last thing, the LEDs. These particular LEDs, I haven't even taken them out of their packet yet. These LEDs are the Cree XHP 70.2 LEDs. So they're very powerful, and I've got 4 of them also. So that's the main components of the torch. As I said, I'm still waiting on the resistors, but the resistors are similar to what the last torch was. But with that, I can start designing and printing all of the components and housing and whatever. So let's get to that. Okay, so what I've got here is all the designs of the different components that I need to put inside the torch. And I have this, which is just an aluminium piece of pipe. It already had that slot cut out of it. I didn't cut that. It's just a piece of aluminium I had laying around. But this is the handle. So it's longer than I would have wanted it, but it works. It fits the batteries, it fits everything in. So I'm going to use it. So I have designed all of the components. So this here is what holds the battery protection circuit boards. They all slot into these little indents here. So they slot into there. That's the first one. The second one is this, which is the battery slots, I guess, where the batteries go. So this slides into the pipe, the batteries slide in here, the terminals go into here, these little sections here, and the wires at the other end of the battery come out of these little holes here. So there's that. Switch housing. So this is what holds the main power switch. I'm sorry, not the main power switch, the push button power switch to turn the torch on. So that slides into the handle again, and the button slides into that. This is the reflector for the LEDs. It should be correct. I'm not 100% sure yet. I have to test it out because, well, I don't have the resistors yet to be able to test the LEDs. So I'm gonna have to wait. And then I've got battery cover. So this section here slides over this here, only by about up to probably about somewhere along there. And then, nope, not that one. And then the rest of it, this indent here slides over the end of the aluminium pipe. And then basically this thread here, nope, not that one. This section here, this little thing here, screws into that thread, and then this weird shape in the middle here, not that one, this goes into that. And basically what this does, this connects the negative terminal of the battery to the front of the battery holder, which is here. So the wires will come through this slot in there. So now I'm going to print what it is that I need to print. So I need to print this because I have the batteries. This, I have the circuit protection boards. I'm not going to print this yet because I don't know if it will work with the resistors, because the resistors are sitting right behind it, but we'll give it a go. Not printing it yet. The reflectors I can't print yet. This battery cover I can print. Battery cover plug I also can print, and this thing over here I can also print. So I'm going to print those and then I'm going to come back. So see you in a second. Right, so I've printed all the parts. Well, I think all the parts that I can print at the moment. So I printed and I've cleaned them all up so they all fit where they need to go and whatever. But the battery holder, I guess, well, better word for it, but anyway, that'll do. Battery holder, the BMS, like the battery management system circuit board holder, the end of the torch, is that, the battery terminal connector thingo, and I dropped it, and the threading plug that goes into the battery, or the end of the torch. that. So now I've cleaned them all up. I need to put all the parts where they need to go. For example, battery holder, I need to put the terminals in the end. This little green thingo for the battery connections, I need to put all the copper plate, whatever it's called, in there. I need to put some springs and some wires in this into these little cavities in the corners, so I can connect the negative terminal to the front of the battery holder and put it all together. So let's go do that. Alright, so I've got all my parts here that I need to put together. This, I can deal with that later because I don't really need to assemble that as such. These can also be assembled later. Oh, dropped it. And that I will do also later. What I need to do now though is make this battery holder. Well, assemble it. So I've got 4 little slots in here, and these little bits of metal need to go into that. So first things first, slot them all in like so. And then I drop a nut in each of the holes, and then this thread, little bolt through. So that's all of the terminals in. I will probably put a dab of hot glue on the outside of them just to make sure they don't accidentally slip out. But now I can get to assembling or gluing down the copper plates for this thing. So I'll get the copper and I'll do that. Alright, so I have all the parts here. Here, oh, go away. Shoot, there we go. Okay. Here I've just got a little copper plate. It's only really thin, and what I'm going to do with that is cut it with a box cutter. I mean, it's not the done thing, but it's only thin copper, so it's not going to end the world. So I've got that. I pretty much just got to cut 4 lengths that fit in there, but I need to cut them longer because I need to fold them over quite a bit up here, simply so that can just connect with the battery. So I'm going to do that right now. There's one little strip, which might actually be too thin. Yeah, a little too thin at one end, but doesn't really matter. And there's 4. So they all fit in nicely, and if I have to, which I will, I'll cut them all down to length. As a matter of fact, probably got to cut them in half. But anyway, we'll see how we go. So now I'm going to go back up and glue them in. Right, see you up there. Right, well, I'm back upstairs. I kind of got a little bit carried away and already glued the 4 copper strips. Whoops. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Gluing's not that interesting anyway. I also just glued a little square bit of old raft of a 3D print because when this cap screwed in, it wasn't quite low enough to hold this in place and push it down as far as it needed to go. So I glued that on there. I may need another one, I may not, I don't know, we'll see when we get there. But that's, as I said, just to hold this green thing onto the batteries properly. So once this glue is fully dry, I can put it back together and try it again and see how it goes. And I need to see what else I need to do. So we'll get going. Righty-ho. So, I was thinking, dangerous, I know, but I was. And I was thinking, well, this project's kinda tedious and time consuming and it's a lot of parts and everything. I was thinking, instead of filming each step of what I do, because that'll probably end up being an hour long, I'm gonna do a montage. So, I don't know how it's gonna go, it could turn out good, it could turn out crap. I don't know, I'll figure that out when I get there. So, I'm gonna do that. Let's go. Okay, I'm going to pause that there for a second because I want to talk about the handle of the torch and a few problems that I had when designing and building, or actually building it. Now, the main problem I had was with the batteries. You might notice here there's wires sticking out of the back of it and there's wires sticking out here. I didn't want that to be the case, but after building this little green thing and testing it with the little copper strips that you saw me put in, it didn't work. So I scrapped this green thing and put in a spring mechanism instead. But the problem with that was I had to have these wires sticking out the back here and here, as you saw before. But it now actually works. So I put this little spring thing in, get it in, and then this other bit screws into the back, and then I plug all these wires in. And I didn't want to do that because that means I have external wires sticking out, which is not exactly, well, not exactly a done thing. But that was my solution, and well, yeah, it's not the prettiest, but it does the job, so I'm going to go with it. Now, the second major issue that I had was the battery protection boards, and why that was an issue was because I think what happened is when I plugged these in, it was detecting that there's a short somewhere, because two of them are wired in series, and well, two are wired in series, the other two are wired in series, and then those two are connected in parallel. If you don't know what that means, go look it up because it's going to be a long explanation if I try to explain it. So anyway, I think it was detecting that there's a short circuit, so the battery management system boards just shut off and said, no, there's a problem, so it's not going to keep going. Anyway, I thought, well, I had a really big issue there, but turns out I didn't. I just have to plug these wires in a specific order, which is weird because, well, it shouldn't have to do that. But anyway, so that's just the couple of issues I want to talk about with the handle, and now I can get on with the rest of the torch. Continued. Alrighty, so this is it. I've taped it all up, and got my paint, set up my paint station on the ground. So now I just need to paint it. I did lose a little bit of footage with the actual assembling of it, which is why it's now up to this stage. Well, actually finished, but you probably didn't see a bit of the assembly. But unfortunately there's nothing I can do about that, so we're just getting straight to painting. So, let's go. Alright, so by the looks of that, looks like I might do 2 coats. It's painted reasonably well. There's a few things I sort of want to fix up and then apply the second coat because there's some scratches and stuff I want to get out. But I'll leave that to dry for about an hour, 2 hours maybe, and I'll come back and give it a second coat. So, back in about an hour. Alright, well, it's been an hour and the first coat is dried, so I need to do the second coat, and I've given it like a light sand sort of thing just to get the main excess off it. So I pretty much just got to go over everything again, fix up any bits that I missed, and wait for it to dry again. Let's go. There. Beautiful. Let's go. Rightio, I think I got everything this time. So, I'm going to wait till it dries, and then I'm going to do the proper test. Oh, I need to cut a slot into the vent. I'll do that when it dries. So, I'll be back in a minute. Alright, so, now that it's dry, I need to cut some slots in it for the vents. So, I'm going to cut the top, well not for the vents, for the heatsink. I'm going to cut it in the top and one in the bottom, and put the reflectors back on, peel all the tape out, and that should be done and dusted. So, let's do that. Alright, well, I've cut the 2 lines, covered in plastic dust now, but I've cut the 2 lines and now I need to bust that out somehow. So I'm going to figure out how to do that and I will be back. Alrighty, so I've cut the slot in the top and that works pretty well. So now I'm going to cut one on the bottom. It'll probably end up being smaller, but I don't really mind. Yeah, so that top one worked out nicely. Hopefully the bottom one works out the same. So let's go. Yes, let's go. Alright, so how I figured out to cut the section out of the last one. Cover it with dust again. Alright, so how I figured out to cut the section out of the last one was use a pair of little side cutters. So I just sort of just cut it out and you'll see what I mean. Alright, so I got that little piece out, and now is just to clean up, and for that I use a little utility, whatever these are called. Alright, so that's all cleaned out. Now, all I need to do is put it back together. So I'm going to go upstairs and put it all back together and do any final touches like peeling this tape off. And then I can get to properly testing it. So, see you then. Alright, so, don't mind the birds in the background. Pretty much all I have to do now is take off all the tape and everything that's there. The tape out of the front, tape off all the switches, tape out of the back, tape off all the wires. And to be perfectly honest, I think that's it. So let's get to that. Final piece, the reflectors. Hopefully no paint got in. Well, I think it's done. I think this thing is finally complete. And I am very happy with it. There's a few things that I would have liked to change or not have, which are these little wires sticking out the back. I had this little LED here. I can't remember if I told you before, but there's this little LED and this little button here. Button doesn't even work anymore. Oh, it does. So I push the button and it tells me if the batteries are working properly, because sometimes the battery management system boards don't work all the time, but it's not a big issue. The paint job actually turned out pretty good. I mean, it's far from perfect, but it's far from terrible. There's the reflectors inside, the 4 LEDs. That hole in the middle was for another LED, but that didn't end up working because it got too hot and started melting the glue, and yeah. So now I have to wait till night time and I will do a proper test with it. So, see you in a few hours when it gets dark. Alright, so I am now out in my backyard and I want to test this thing fully and properly as it's fully built now. I mean, complete. Now, I said in the beginning of the video, see if you can, oh I think I said, see if you can guess how many lumens it is. So, my last torch, if you haven't seen that, go watch that video. You can find out how many lumens that one is in that video. Now this one is 17,000 lumens. So, just a couple. Now, for comparison, that's 1,000 lumens. It's not particularly impressive. I mean, standing outside actually looking at it, not through the camera, is actually not bad, but not as good as this one. Alright, here goes. Yeah, so that's 17,000 lumens in all its glory. So yeah, that's a couple. So it lights up everything. As you can see, it's a lot more spread than, well, I would have liked it to be more of a spotlight, but it's quite spread. Even then, it is still very, very bright. So, that's that, and compared to my last one, this is how loud it is. Pretty much silent. So yeah, that's yeah. Well, I'm going to go back up and talk about it a little bit more and just explain a little bit more about the torch, and I think that'll be everything. So I'll go up, explain it, and explain some stuff, and then yeah, that should be everything. Alrighty, so I just wanted to talk about a couple of things with the comparison between these two torches. I want to talk about the constraints that I had at the beginning of the video about things I wanted to improve, and just a couple of other comments and things like that. So first thing is batteries. I wanted it to have its own batteries, and yes, it does have its own batteries. They're all contained within here. There are these wires at the top which are a bit annoying and a bit out of place, but there's not much I could do about that. Which brings me to my next point. It being more compact, so wires aren't everywhere and everything's contained inside. The wires aren't everywhere, that's actually been done pretty well, except for these couple at the top, but I'm not too worried about that. And everything is contained inside this handle, well actually inside the torch. I've got all the electronics within this handle. This handle is filled with electronics. All the batteries, everything, the heat sinks contained inside, the reflectors are inside, everything's inside, all the wiring, everything. So that's done well. The third one is stronger and tougher. So this one here is, while it was pretty good, I did want it to be better. So it was a little bit flimsy where the handle is and attaches to the heatsink. The handle itself was a bit iffy. The head, the reflector at the top of it was also a bit, So I improved that. This handle's made of aluminium. This head is made of PVC pipe. This adapter, I guess I'll call it, that's 3D printed, but I've got some steel rod that I bent into shape and glued that in place to give it a bit more support. And everything else doesn't really need to be that strong. My next point was brighter and more powerful, and it is very much brighter. So this is 11,000 lumens. This here, 17,000 lumens, so I definitely improved that. So, and one more point that I wanted to put in, which wasn't in the beginning, was the cooling and the noise. So this here made a lot of noise and didn't have the best of cooling. This one here has excellent cooling and it's pretty much silent. So I did that well. So I covered all my constraints, all of them worked. They turned out pretty good. And I've just got a couple more things to talk about, which are the struggles, things that I did better, things that I did worse. The struggles that I had. Well, this doesn't end. Struggles that I had were how I was going to attach the LEDs to the heatsink. Well, thermal tape covered that. The battery protection boards, they don't like it when the batteries are at full charge for some unknown reason. They don't like that voltage, which is about 4.2 volts per battery, and they didn't like that. I can't do much about that. These wires at the top, those were a struggle, not the wires themselves, but how I was going to connect the back of the batteries, the negative terminal, to the rest of the torch. And I got around that by putting these wires on the outside, which I didn't want to do, but I sort of had to. So, next thing is things that I did better compared to this torch. Well, pretty much everything except the battery life. Everything's more compact, it's probably a little lighter, more powerful, quieter, better cooling. I can upgrade it in the future. I can pull this off and change the reflectors. The LEDs are much better, much higher quality. The resistors are the same resistors, same company. Switches, everything's can be done with ease with one hand. So I've got the actual main on and off button here and the main power switch here. whereas this one was the switch back here and the main on-off switch there. So, the things I did worse really was only the battery life, and can't do much about that with the size of the batteries that I have. In here, I have four 18650 batteries, and those have about 2,500 milliamp hour each. This here has two 3 amp hour 18 volt batteries, meaning this should theoretically have a battery life of over an hour, while this only has 15 minutes. That's alright. But other than that, I am extremely impressed with this torch. It's turned out awesomely. It's everything I wanted it to be. It's just awesome. So with that, I think that's pretty much everything. If you're wondering what this is the actual torch that I use, the 1000 lumen torch. So it's only really tiny. This is a bought one. Other than that, I think that's it. So, thanks for watching. I'm the Exo-Engineer. See ya.